Hello everyone, welcome back to my setting, and we're back with Wheel of Time, this time with the Path of Daggers, chapters 1 to 10. A small note, I did plan on releasing this video earlier, but my neighbors had this bright idea of doing some construction work all day. It was impossible to record. So without further ado, let's go on and recap the first 10 chapters, including prologue first. So first we have a scene of a bunch of Kandor rulers and Shinar rulers and Saldea rulers. They all meet to have this ceremony, which apparently is very rare, and it's been done just a few times since the breaking of the world. And the ceremony consists of making some sort of an agreement that they agree with each other, I suppose. And I suppose this scene serves as our daily dose of court intrigue, and we have a point of view of Queen, what's her name? Tenobia. She's some sort of a matchmaker. She tries to set up a marriage between Queen Athaniel, the Kandor ruler, and her uncle Ramsin. And they also have a whole contingent of Aes Sedai with them, I think 13 of them, which is the amount to form a circle. And surprisingly, to show their commitment, I'm not sure if it's done every time, but I suppose it is if it's that important. They seal the deal, so to say, by slashing their hands and gripping them together. Which, yeah, sounds serious. And this is kind of a part of the oath they're all taking, that they'll be on the same page until the deed is done to the death. And they plan next on what to do should they find Rand, and what should they do with him once they find him. Is he Dragon Reborn? If he is, does that matter? And so on and so forth. And so that's that part of the prologue. Next we have Verin, and she is in the Aiel camp. And she is doing some intelligence work. She is gathering information from the captured, imprisoned Aes Sedai. So she's also playing this role of a meek, submissive Aes Sedai, just to blend in, which she does quite well, almost too well, I would say. She's quite adept at this, which is, I don't know, interesting. So she, as with everything, being under the Wise One's roof, she needs a permission and gets one to question the Aes Sedai that are imprisoned. And she focuses her attention on the imprisoned Aes Sedai that don't have warders. And she has this small ter'angreal, which I guess she kept for a long time, for decades, and I'm not sure if anyone knows about it. Not too sure how that plays into the whole thing, but she also mentions about not making a mistake for 70 plus years. And one of the wise ones, I think it was a wise one, Beldain Nyram, she enters the tent while Verin is doing her work, and she employs compulsion on her, which is not really compulsion. It's kind of a almost compulsion. From the looks of it, by reading this, I got an impression that it's kind of improvised, much more complicated, less elegant weave of compulsion, but it serves the same purpose. So, by doing so, she interrogates Beltane, and she also finds out from her that the red Aes Sedai that's been captured, Verin, has escaped. And so, which means, I guess, that she is Red Aja. Then Verin thinks long and hard that she must keep Rand alive until it's time for him to die, which, again, Jordan throwing me a curveball. All this time, I've been kind of convinced that Verin is playing her own game, but she is playing her own game for the greater good. I'm not so sure now. I'm not sure what to think, but more about that later. And then a last scene of the prologue is Moradin doing the villain thing of monologuing to himself, I guess, thinking wide and playing Shara, which is the game of stones that we've seen some of the characters play, and thinking about Rand and the state of the world, I guess. So that's Moradin. We leave Moradin and we are back to the gang of Avienda, Nynaeve, Lan, Elaine, and Brigitte. So Olver isn't found, and Matt is still in the city. He's looking for him, and Nynaeve and Lan are having, I guess, newlywed arguments, which are, I guess, meant to be cute. I don't know. It's who protects who. Nynaeve doesn't want to be held on the palm of the hand like a porcelain doll, and Lan will rather die than... It's just teenage stuff, I guess, even though they're far from teenagers. I guess Nynaeve isn't... She's like, what, 25? 26? Far from a teenager. But I guess the scale kind of slides to the teenage side more a bit, since she was brought up in a very secluded, isolated area, so maybe not. But Lan is what, 39, 40? So, but whatever. To be young and in love. And they all go on their mission, and their mission is, well, to make use of the bowl of the winds, to shut down the heat, the unchanging nature of the weather. So they also, with them, they have sister Teslin, which is kind of a low-ranking sister on Elaita's side, and they kind of put her in her place, which was nice. It was a very nice scene. And they try to warn her about, why I don't know, since she's clearly a turncoat, but they try to warn Teslin about the whole situation with the Golem and with Black Aja and with the Forsaken, and she just dismisses it all as flights of fancy, which if I were them, I wouldn't overwhelm the person with so much negative information. And I don't know, it's kind of silly to treat someone, especially a grown Aes Sedai, as a child, but it seems to me that's kind of what they should be doing all the time, knowing what they know about other Aes Sedai and by their own behavior. It's like, Teslin, there's this thing that Forsaken employ called Golem, and you should be careful. And maybe later mention Black Aja and everything else. But I digress. So they reach a group of sea folk, of windfinders, of I guess they are technically wilders, the seafaring people that employ powers of the wind to do their work. And they also bring together with them the knitting circle, the kin, and a few Aes Sedai with them, including Teslin, right? So trouble is, the knitting circle is very, very nervous around Aes Sedai in general, but since the events of the last book, when they were retrieving the pole, and one of the Black Aja that attacked them, they managed to capture her, and it's a sister called Ispan. So they've been tasked by the girls to guard this Ispan, and Nynaeve is constantly drugging Ispan to lower her inhibitions, I guess, which translates to her giggling and being just high all the time. And that's kind of a trouble, because the kin can help themselves, but to tremble before this Aes Sedai, even though I guess she's technically Aes Sedai, but she's an enemy, Black Aja, and incredibly dangerous. But they are constantly trying to leave this responsibility of guarding her. And there are just a lot of general spats between the groups, spats between the kin and the Aes Sedai, between the Windfinders and the girls. And the thing with Windfinders, from what I understand, if I understand correctly, is the kind of the bargain that's been struck between Aes Sedai and the Windfinders and the Sea Folk is they need Sea Folk help to retrieve, which they did, and activate securely the bowl of the wind, so they can fix the weather, and in return for their help, they can and they will give the bowl back to them and show them how to use it, which is kind of the most important part. And in their hands, it will be a powerful thing, because Windfinders do use channeling to channel the wind, but ter'angreal of that level would just amplify it 100-fold. So yeah, that's the thing. And Elaine is constantly trying to be and managing to be a kind of a stern authority that makes peace between them, even though she's slowly losing her patience. So, spats aside, Avienda opens a gateway to their destination, and there's a lot of self-reflection going there, because it takes Avienda all of her strength to do so, but while Elaine can do it just with a fraction of concentration of power. And they go through the gateway and to Ebou Dar. And Avienda actually spots a figure on the spires of the palace. So we don't know who it is. Well, actually, we get a good idea later, but they don't know. The characters don't know. So Avienda sends one of the sea folk aside, and sends her to warn Elaine, but they don't do it. She doesn't do it directly. She doesn't say, "Oh, I think there is a Forsaken spying on us." She kind of makes a vague warning, and she does it with good intentions to be more diplomatic. Even though it's a bit cryptic, because if she says, "Oh, a Forsaken is looking for us," the Windfinders might just panic and disperse. And then, spoilers, the Windfinder does not warn Elaine. And later, Avienda and Elaine have a conversation, and Avienda wants to kind of pressure Windfinders more intensely, wants to kind of put her boot on them, but Elaine says something in the vein of, you're right, Windfinders are trying to grab the ball and get out of their bargain as soon as possible, but your message was too cryptic and I wouldn't have got it even if the message were relayed to me. So next time maybe we can meet halfway, which is an interesting, it's a good scene, it's a mundane scene, but I like it when there's clearly potential for misunderstanding and the authors most of the time go the easier route of making the misunderstanding blossom and get out of control into a disaster. And it's a rarity when two characters just sit and communicate and they're on the same page. And it's not a seed for a new drama to go overboard. That was nice. So they're in Ebou Dar, and what happens next? Well, the kin are still moaning about not wanting to guard Ispan, and the thing is, Ispan needs to be questioned, and Elaine doesn't have quite the stomach for it, and Avienda traditionally isn't allowed to do that yet. Something like 20 years need to pass before she can question a prisoner, which it's one of the few things of their culture that I don't understand why, but traditions, they often don't have to make sense. I mean, the whole thing about them not wanting to ride a horse or kill someone with a sword, even though they're perfectly fine with killing someone with a spear, it is what it is. I mean, cultures are different. And so their destination now is the farm, the kin's farm, and which is the sort of a gathering place, a safe place where the kin have and are sending their members to hide from the tower, even though the tower knows perfectly fine and well that they're there and they don't pose a threat, and now more than ever they're actually quite welcome to rejoin them, and which is somewhat of a case that happens. So this whole group contingent of Aes Sedai, kin, and sea folk go to the farm, and the women that are there have a minor meltdown, but turns out no. Nynaeve and Elaine promised to them that they can all retake the tests to become Aes Sedai, and even if they fail them again, they can still stay and be part of the tower in some other role if they choose to. They're not being held in any kind of contempt, which is sensible. So all of the people leave the farm through the gateway and to one of the I missed something very important. So they go to the farm, and the sight of Aes Sedai, of course, causes stir. But Ispan is then questioned. But what's important in that scene is they finally activate the ter'angreal. So Avienda goes through the items that they found in the warehouse where they retrieved the ter'angreal, and then they instruct everyone how to link. So 13 channelers link and use Bowl of the Winds. And suddenly, just as soon as they're done, they realize from the the nasty bird from the sky. I can't remember what it's called, that appears on the horizon, and they try to shoot out the fireballs, which was awesome. That Shanchan are here. First they think it's shadow spawn, but Nynaeve and Elaine are much more perceptive and have experience with them, and they of course correctly notice that Shanchan are invading. So, and also Elaine tells Windfinders that they're not free until the actual weather changes. So they did the thing, but they need to see the result. So all of the people jump through the gateway to one of the Elaine's estates, to Endor, I guess. And Elaine and Brigitte and Avienda stay behind so that Elaine could try and unravel her weave in order to kind of deceive Shanchan, who are approaching. And this is something that I also missed. So when they teleported to farm, Avienda did, after they teleported, I guess, Avienda did something, or actually before, I guess, well, it doesn't matter. Avienda did something very, I suppose, dangerous through the eyes of other Aes Sedai, like the one that's on Elida's side, which is she unraveled the weave of the traveling gate. And apparently that's very, very dangerous, and it can backfire, and Avienda has a particular talent for it, which is rare even amongst the wise ones, and it's all but unheard of on the Aes Sedai side. And they bring up an example of a sister whose name I can't recall right now, who dedicated her life at studying ter'angreal, and her whole point was that she was very careful, but she kind of almost burned out and killed her warder and disappeared. And I guess the point is it's incredibly dangerous, and we see it firsthand because Avienda unravels the weave so that they can cover their tracks successfully. But when Elaine tries to do it, she makes a mistake and destroys the gateway, killing a lot of Shanchan in the process. Just boom, a huge boom happens. So back to Perrin, and a lot of stuff also happens. So we have Perrin who wakes up, and Aiel is already running around the place. Camp is rising, and he is hungry, which I can relate to. And he's kind of annoyed because apparently one of their life's greatest pleasures is to make your own breakfast, and he can do that. But that aside, Aram appears to him and bestows wisdom upon him, saying that, you should let people do even minor things as making you breakfast, because it's symbolic and makes them think you don't trust them enough to do their designated tasks. And you should stop trying to do everything yourself now that you are a leader, which makes a lot of sense. A lot of leadership is that. And, well, and I guess it's something that mirrors Aiel's opinion on the matter, which is one of the rare moments where I agree with Aiel. Then Perrin spots Master Gil and wants to talk to him, and apparently Master Gil is now something called Shambayan, which is a silly word, I can't help it. Sounds like kumbaya. It makes me want to grab my guitar and go make a song about Shambayan, the Master Guild. And Shambayan is someone like I guess a butler? That's how I understood it. Is it a butler? Please tell me if I'm wrong. He's like responsible for supplying Perrin with everything he might need. I guess from clothes to food to whatever, supplies. So Aiel has tasked him with a list of things that need to be done just bought, I guess, in Bethel. Bethel is a place in Skyrim, I guess. Perrin kind of is annoyed with everything, but that's who Perrin is. He doesn't see the need to that. But there is this guy, Bolwer, who also decided to become their personal secretary. By there I mean the house Abara. But actually he might prove useful, because when Perrin talks to him, Bolwer seems to be very knowledgeable about matters of just statehood, administration, things like that. And also they have something in common, and just seething hatred of white cloaks, which instant best friends. And then Perrin goes to visit Aiel to chat. And then Javier Narel intercepts him, and they go and inspect the one of the camps, and turns out it's more clean and orderly than one of the Two Rivers camps. And then they sort of have a conversation about how Aiel treat Aes Sedai that are in their care, and Perrin actually compliments the other camp and says that he will address the Wise Ones about this whole conversation. And unsurprisingly, the conversation with the Wise Ones is difficult. Perrin is told to kill Massima because the other Dreamwalkers said so. And Massima is, if I recall correctly, the not the false prophet, but he's one of the soldiers from way back when who turned into a fanatic and sort of doomsday supporter of Rand. I guess that's oversimplifying things, but yeah, he caused a lot of trouble for Rand. And Perrin doesn't want to kill him because it's not the part of mission that Rand gave him. And Perrin also tries to address the treatment of the Aes Sedai prisoners, and they tell him to beat it because that's none of his business. Even one of the captured Aes Sedai, Sonid, something on S, tells him to back off, which is weird. Really weird. Not sure what to think about the captured one. Maybe she's Black Aja? I don't know. Perrin is then kind of overlooking the city of Bethel, which is in Gildan, since they're there. And Rand has sent him to negotiate a treaty with Queen Aliandra. She's the Queen of Gildan, and she doesn't have the military strength to kind of secure the security, which is, hello, Department of Redundancy Department, the security of her land. So he wants to send an envoy to negotiate, because taking it by force is going to be an unnecessary bloodshed. I mean, the city doesn't have the necessary means to defend to repel the attack. They have the necessary means to defend themselves, which will result in heavy casualties on both sides, which is something that neither side want. And so since everybody is still kind of nervous, especially since there was this incident like a week ago where one power beamed in the sky, and nobody knew why, but apparently it included both halves of the power, which is, I guess I missed this, but was it, I'll leave it for questions, but more on that later. So to make things more complicated, there are White Cloak patrols that are coming from the Amadisian border, so naturally everyone is on edge. And there is a rumor that Ebou Dar has fallen and Perrin is dead, and Perrin is unsure what to do with all this information. So he decides to do a smart thing, which I compliment. He decides to send Verin and her Aes Sedai advisor and one of the commanders to Aleandra, because on one hand, it keeps her away from his wife and him and doesn't complicate things. On the other hand, Verin is many things, and one of those things is a skilled politician. So Perrin once again displaying a good leadership qualities. And which is kind of backfires again, because Verin sees it as a victory over Aiel, and Aiel doesn't mind, not until Perrin somehow in his head gets an idea that he needs to justify his decision to Aiel, which then makes her angry, which is just, Perrin, you stepped right into it. And on the way there, we have Aram, who notices a group of brigands that are attacking a group of travelers. And they intervene, and brigands escape. And one of the travelers also tries to run. And Perrin follows the traveler, it's a she, and brings her back. And he introduces the traveler as Maigdin, and brigands are also caught. Turns out brigands are Prophet's men, Massima's men, and then one of the Aes Sedai warders who kind of participated in the hunt for the brigands shows his war trophies being ears of men. Perrin makes angry, and he almost wants to hang him on the spot, but he doesn't want to complicate things, I get. And Maigdin, the traveler, decides to accept Perrin's invitation to join his camp, and because she hears how overhears a conversation. So Perrin speaks to the Prophet's man and recognizes two men in her company who are trying to be incognito. Then we have Basil Gill, who tells some nonsense story about how they ended up in Gieltan, and Aiel agrees to take her group into her service, and they get some reports from the scouts later. And then we cut back to Queen Morghese, who is now Maigdin, right? And I guess I mishandled this, right? So the traveler is actually Queen Morghese in disguise. And Telenvor is one of the lieutenants that kept her safe. So they kind of consummate, well, I guess they just guess him and Queen Morghese, which is now just Maigdin. So yeah, the move of sending the envoy to Queen Aliandre pays off, and she pledges fealty to Perrin, and then Aiel has some sort of conversation with Perrin, which is not that important, but Perrin unfortunately has to dish out some frontier justice because some of the Dragonsworn have pillaged a farm and burned it with people still inside it, so he hangs them, and then quite atmospherically a thunderstorm breaks, so which I guess marks the ending of the heat they've been enduring and the weather going back to normal again. So that's that. That was long, but surprisingly, from what I've seen, it's the shortest book so far. Only 600 pages, shortest so far, but it does pack quite a bit. So let's move to questions. So we have a Aes Sedai called Teslin Baradon, who is a Aes Sedai that supports the other Emerald seat, Elida seat. So my question is, she clearly kind of refuses to acknowledge that Nynaeve and Elaine are full Aes Sedai, and but also she submits to them in a matter of speaking because she is much more lower in power, so they hold seniority over her in I guess in the ranks. I'm just not sure if that's a formal thing or informal thing, or if it's a kind of an unwritten rule. Because since the tower has various Ajas, and putting Black Aja aside, they clearly have a power structure that is directly correlating to power level. Here I'm not too sure because Teslin is different Aja from Nynaeve and Elaine, but yeah, is it something that just instinctive for Aes Sedai to submit to the weaker one or what? But that's one question. Another question is, it's a question for fandom, Wheel of Time fandom at large. What's the prevailing opinion? Is the bowl subplot, does it go on for too long? Now it's been for like 3 books and it's now resolved. I personally didn't mind it because I think some other subplots dragged a bit in relation to, if we can compare different subplots to this one. But I didn't mind it because I think the whole idea of the Dark One, I guess, impacting the world at large by weather was a very effective mechanic, story-wise. My next question is about Moradin. So yes, he is a mysterious figure, and I actually like that, but my question is, where is the castle he presumably stole, usurped, or whatever? As I got an idea that, so he was spying on the girls. He was the figure, I suppose, the Avien de Saw, and he traveled back to whatever he is, but where that is. Where is it? It's clearly not somewhere in Blight or Sheagul or whatever. It's a castle of some kind, a manor that he just moved into, like he does. And my last question is, what about the beam in the sky that people in Gildan saw? Since it was 2 beams, and maybe I missed it, but was it 2 powers like Saidin and Saidar, or was it 1 power and true power from the Dark One at the same time? So, which would mean that it was from the Forsaken. But that's it for questions for today. What I liked. Surprisingly, Elaine and her delivery of an expertly honed, biting retort to Teslin. And I quote, "What we are about, Teslin," she said in chill voice, "is none of your business." She too stood straight, her eyes blue eyes. A chance ray of light from a high window caught her golden curls, seemingly setting them afire. Right then, Elaine could have made a roof mistress seem a goat herd with too much osquai in her belly. It was a skill she honed well. She delivered each word with crystal dignity. "You have no right to interfere in anything we do, in anything that any sister does. No right whatsoever. So pull your nose out of your coats, you summer ham, and be glad we do not choose to take issue with you supporting an usurper on the Emerald seat." End quote. Yeah, that was powerful. Points to Elaine on that one. Another thing that I liked, and it's something that I mentioned a lot in previous books, but it bears repeating. Once again, the cultural norms and the subtle differences that are inherent to those cultural norms. Jordan's really good at those. Even as something as innocuous as calling someone by their full name, which indicates closeness, or calling someone by their full name, which would indicate anger or distance or formality, which is displayed through the character of Avienda, who cannot get used to calling someone by a shorthand. Not calling someone, for example, Elaine. Not just saying Elaine, but saying Elaine Trakand every time, which is her habit and habit of her people. She wants to get used to calling her by her first name. And another thing that I really like is back to Elaine, but I think it's kind of it's a short quote that crystallizes Aes Sedai in general. And I quote, "You can dizzy yourself trying to find currents in Aes Sedai politics." Total and ultimate truth there. I don't think anything else needs to be added to that. Another thing that I liked, so Moradin, he is in his palace, wherever that is, and he is thinking about the capital C civilization and the surprises this new era has brought. Because apparently in the Age of Legends, weather was strictly controlled by a ter'angreal. And in this age, he notices that there are people who can do it on a large enough scale without it, which is something that amuses him because, as sophisticated as his age was, in terms of ingenuity, there are a lot of things in this era that surprise even him, like warders and people who are powerful enough to affect weather. Not on the scale to fix the whole thing, but like I guess he's referring to windfinders and things like that. And it's an interesting insight to changes of eras, cyclical nature of them, but also breakthroughs. He's kind of it kind of shows insight into his character, which at this point I know very little about him, but he has enough of self-awareness where he does call them wilders and primitives and all kinds of words, but he acknowledges that they are quite crafty. So he's an elitist, but he's not a fool. That's interesting. Another thing that I liked is Avienda's character growth. So she starts as this example of an Aiel spear sister and then later a wise one. And now she's someone who is becoming more aware of the boundaries of traditional expectations. Because she kind of punishes herself for starting to notice clothes and enjoying wearing clothes at the same time. She's at odds with her former stance about clothes, which is, well, they're just clothes and they serve a purpose. And it's quite interesting because Not that long ago, she wasn't that introspective, which to me is a number one indicator of a character growth. And I especially enjoyed her exchange with Muriel about closing the traveling wave. She showed a lot of backbone. Well, not backbone, it's not to say that she didn't have one, but the kind of expectations and traditions would normally stop her from speaking up and speaking back. But she totally did. And next one, finally some quality Perrin point of view. Also, a side note, I'm starting to think if there's another layer of that old running joke that Jordan always does about the other two being better at relationships, here being judges of human nature. The running joke is whenever one of the three to Verin has a trouble with a woman, they all recall or reminisce about, oh, the other two, I wish they were here, they know how to handle women. And I wonder if that applies to just judging of character and human nature in general. But I think it's Perrin here because he seems to be an excellent judge of character, Aiel notwithstanding. Because as much of a loner he is, which he is, it's many facets of his personality, and symbolically he's a loner. His connection to wolves that are loners and all that. But as much of a loner he is, it doesn't mean he's not excellent at navigating the world of men and judging men. And my last point that I really like was this effect that Jordan achieved. So there's this unique fear that female channelers feel toward Shanchan with a good reason. It's the unspoken looming threat of being enslaved to Damane. And that's something very effective. And to Jordan's credit, he doesn't overdo it. He manages to employ just the right amount of it. So that's for the positives. For the negatives, very little. Even the prologue wasn't too much. I had criticisms with prior prologues that they were too unstructured and read too much like irregular chapters and would be better served as regular chapters. And here, I guess it wasn't too long and overbearing. I think that's more due to the short nature of this book in general. But I do have a small nitpick, and it is a tiny little small nitpick. And it seems silly even as I say it out loud, but I have this growing irrational hatred for the word murmured. I know Jordan is far from the only one, and he's certainly not the worst one, but there are so many, even modern authors that do it today, and I just hate it. Character murmured to the other one. Can you just, use another word, mix it up a little, whispered, told, shouted. There are so many great words that could be used instead. It makes this weird image in my head where everyone is just closing up to someone's face and gently murmuring to someone's ear a long line of dialogue. It makes no sense. It's a minor nitpick, I know. But yeah, two predictions this time. So, looks like the romance between Queen Morgase, now Maegden, with Telenvor directly mirrors budding romance with Garrett Bryn and Sion Sanche. So I predict that they will be very similar, that they will turn out similar because the setup is very similar. We have an authority, female authority, a on one hand we have Queen Margaise, who at one point was the queen and lost everything, and on the other we have Siwan Sanche, who was the Amberlin seat, and she was also very powerful. You could say on the levels of authority, on the level of a queen, and she also lost everything. But both of them found a support. In this case, on Queen Margaise's case, she found a Telenvor, who is of a lower standing. He is not of noble birth. I don't remember if he is, but who stood by her side. It's obviously not one-sided on any end. And then we have Gareth Bryn and Siwan Sanche, where Gareth Bryn is of noble birth, but maybe the differences might come down to, will Queen Margaise marry Telenvor knowing that he is of a lower stature, but seeing how she is given up on her title and everything, maybe not. But yeah, tell me what you think about it. And my last prediction is about Olver. I'm frankly not too sure what to think about the whole Olver situation. I reckon he's been kidnapped. That's my theory. But by whom and for what purpose, can't say. Was he kidnapped by a golem? I don't know. Or a Forsaken? I don't know. Is Matt on someone's direct radar? Probably. It's difficult to say. And that's been that. Thank you all for watching and subscribing and liking. And thank you, Ethan, for your generous support on Patreon. The next song will be a Matt song. It's not directly a Matt song. It's a song that I had an idea for a song that would kind of describe his band and what he stands for. And I've got some great suggestions from Ethan about some future songs. I wish I could write and sing songs with lyrics, but frankly I can't. It's just not something that I'm good at, but the songs will keep on arriving. I will try to deliver them at least once a week. So yeah, there's that. Stay safe, everyone, and have an enjoyable summer day. Bye-bye.